Cool. So I just hit the 420 launch 420 engine. It gives me an option to load a project that I've already made into 420. If I made a project that's in an earlier version, it'll give me an option to copy it over and upgrade it to 420. You can't go backwards. If I make something in 421, I can't go backwards to 420, which is why I don't want to go ahead with the newest version and find out a crucial thing isn't there that I didn't know about. So I'm always one engine behind. Just, it happens every semester. I'll just say it again. And then I could do new projects. And we could do projects that have C++. We don't have to. We can always add C++ later. But in this class, we're going to stay in the domain of blueprints, which is the scripting language, the visual scripting language of Unreal. So you're just like playing with like I don't know if you've ever seen like Scratch or Maximus P or whatever, but it's like more logical because it's actually C++ functions. And then we have some templates here, and we have things like handheld AR. It would make a template that has a pass-through camera so that it exports to a phone, and you get to pass through camera and see the thing on the other side of the phone. And then what's cool about blueprint development in Unreal is that when you're making it for AR Core and AR Kit, you're doing it the same way. It just exports one or the other. It takes note of the fact that there's two different code bases, and you don't have to worry about that. Puzzle templates. There's even a rolling ball template, which I only know one game in the world that uses rolling ball, and it's called Marble Madness. It was 1986, but if you want to make Marble Madness again, you have a rolling ball template. And then down here at the bottom, we have VR. You're going to either probably be mostly in this class in first person, which does VR, but then it lets you to, if you don't have a headset, like you're working on your Mac, you can WASD around, move around, right? Or you're going to be using virtual reality template, which requires you to have controls and all that kind of stuff. You could switch between the two, but what I suggest is like working in a first-person project and then like migrating or converting it later on when you need the headset. I mean, I would also recommend just like finding somebody who has a headset that'll just give it to you or something like that, so you don't have to worry about it. So the other things, so I'm going to start off first of all just to show you what's called the elephant in the room, the fact that there's a virtual reality template that has hands and lets you do things, interactions. And it's a good way of learning what is a game engine and what's functions. I am targeting a desktop console, maximum quality, and starter content. I'm going to say no starter content right now. This is at 600 megabytes, and I'll show you how to add it in later if you forgot to do it. Okay, and then I have a storage drive that has a lot more space, so I always put my projects in the storage drive, not on my C drive. And then I give it a title, and this one will be basically I will make a project, and I'll continue to use this throughout the entire semester, so it's all in one place for you guys to like take from me and take apart. Okay. All right, that's everything there. Create project and let it finish stuff. So it's like pulling from the engine install and giving me all the assets in one folder, and it's going to be in that directory that I made. And the folder structure in Explorer or Finder, or whatever you want to call it, correlates to the folder structure of the project inside the engine, right? So if I'm trying to find an asset, I could do it both ways, and that'll be abundantly clear once we start looking at the content. And it's very important when we start migrating content from other projects to our project. This is when I used to need like a text file of jokes. I hear that your mama jokes are coming back. They're like really, really big on YouTube. Like 12-year-olds are really getting into your mama jokes. And they're like, they don't know the classics, so I'm like throwing down on them. And they're like, whoa. I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't care what PewDiePie says. Like, we made the originals. No, it was like YouTube, like hour-long thing. Like, learn all the your mama jokes you could do. It's if I had more time, I'd edit this out of the screen demo. What is this? So as you guys get comfortable with using the hardware and stuff, I literally sit like this all day long. Like I'll have the little marks right here and here, but like this is how I make VR, and I go. Okay. So it's just like getting comfortable with, like, it's much easier than, like, it's just like a steampunk goggles, right? You have to get comfortable with it for right now until it moves to the next thing. The next Oculus that's coming out will be this quarter, and it's called Oculus Quest, which is why I'm not pushing anyone to really buy an Oculus right now, because there's going to be a whole new wave, and Oculus Quest does what your phone does for positional tracking. It doesn't need these anymore. It does what's called inside out. It's pushing out and looking for the walls and the floors, and so it doesn't have this anymore. So I think it still will have limitations. It will be less powerful because it's not being driven by a computer, but it will be freeing, and it'll have controllers that are good. Literally still at 45%. So let's see. I had a project I worked on in the fall. Would take everyone 30 minutes to open up because it was so dense. It was just crazy. Well, I don't need Chrome. I don't need the launcher. I can get rid of. It says I'm screen recording too. Oh, it is what it is. I should have started screen recording afterwards. Yeah, this computer for that project, I maxed out like the RAM. I maxed out everything I could, but you're stuck with the CPU. And without further ado, so this is the VR template. This is a single level. You might know them as maps, or you use them interchangeably. You can load maps by, well, this will tell you how to choose maps while you're inside of it, but you can also just open up levels here and find them. I think the easiest way to find a map is to come down to this. So this is your content browser. Here's all the things that you can use in your scene, and these are all things that are in your scene, which is called the outliner. I like to filter the content browser and just say, show me levels, and there's all my levels. Right, so this is just a way of filtering down. You can take that filter off, and I'm at the root. Right, if I kept on going into these folders, then I search. Well, I went to the maps folder when I'm looking. But if I go into like blueprints folder and I say filter by levels, it's going to show nothing. Right, I need to go back to the root to see where everything is, and this is the easiest way to navigate through everything. And we have the startup map, which we see right here, which says you can use an HMD and a gamepad. Oculus comes with like a little Xbox controller, or use spacebar. And what you're going to do is you look around and you hit spacebar and you teleport to where that is. The simplest way of interacting with the Oculus. You don't need the controllers. You only need one head tracker. It's like the bare minimum. So let's go to HMD Locomotion. So all these templates look like this. You have like little obstacles and some text telling you what it is. And then here's our camera. This is where we will start. And cameras are called pawns. They're things that are controlled and possessed. You saw how in the VR Showdown, I was riding along and then I ejected out. I ejected myself out of the pawn so that I could free roam. It's just a terminology to get used to. You can have just cameras, but you want to possess them and make them be, because you can have multiple, and that's how you like can switch between different characters. And it's just a terminology you should know, and we'll kind of hammer it in that the pawn is the character. And let's resize this so you can see all the buttons. And then where it normally says play, I can say preview in VR. Now, one thing that people always kind of do the first week is they open up the project and then they plug in the headset. If you do that, you have to restart the project because it doesn't know that you had it needs to know that you have VR connected before it starts the project, right? So this will be grayed out if I just connected it now, right? And so if I do VR preview, this is supposed to be a sky. It's still like rendering shaders, but you guys can see this little hoop, right? So that's just the direction in which I want to go. And then hit spacebar, and there I'm at. So this is a way of moving in VR. Now I'm like, oh, my back. Ugh. You know, so it's got its problems, but it's also, you know, it's functional. So you know, we have a certain amount of area that we can do VR in, and if we want to go places in VR, we need to locomote there, right? So teleporting has become one convention in VR for moving places, okay? And this is doing it without using any controllers. That's probably the last time I'll be in there until I teach the class in a year. So the motion controller map gives us hands, and we've seen hands when we did the calibration, right? It had you, so the purple hands, and you got to see it. These are going to be like more like robot hands. And I'm going to open this up real quick. Here's all the code doing the stuff. It's there, don't be afraid of it, just don't worry about it. It's doing everything fine, and you can continue to use this pawn, because we can find it and we can drag it into any project we make, and it'll just work, right? So for now, we just know it's called motion controller pawn, and when we make a map later on, I'll show you how to import it in, and that everything will be kind of default VR. If you want to have controllers, if you don't care about the controllers, you just want to look around, you don't have to worry about it. But here I have some fun objects here. I wondered what I could do with them. So now, wake up. There we go. I got robot hands. Cool. And if I use the thumbstick and press down, it has the same kind of idea, right? I get to choose where I want to be. And then also, if I rotate the thumbstick around, you see that? I get to choose which way I'm facing. Much easier to turn around. I don't think it did right though. There you go. So it works. And now I could be on top of things or whatever. Cool. Can I get on top of this though? It won't let me. That's fine for right now. I'll show you how to get around that in a second. So let's go back to the other side. And we're just getting used to being in VR doing things. Turn around. Turn around. There you go. Okay, so what can I do? I can grab things. Don't worry about it. Boink, boink. Boink. Over here. Boink. There we go. And this is why you need to establish a space for yourself, right? Okay, so super fun. Some things are weird. Like when I picked up the boxes, they were like way outside of my hand, right? They were like I wasn't really grabbing onto them. So all we're doing here is we're doing the two fundamental things game engines do when they're rendering content. They have collisions, they detect collisions, and they have physics. And here we're seeing both those things. When we grab the block, it takes away physics, right? So I'm holding it, it doesn't fall, doesn't have gravity, and then when I let go, it puts gravity back on. This is literally what the code says. It says set physics on, set physics off. That's what it's doing whenever I hit a controller. We're not going to worry about looking at it just yet. And then what it's also doing is it's saying grab whenever you can collide with something. If I just grab another air, it won't pick up air. And if I what is the barrier that I have to pass to pick something up? Well, there's an invisible thing called a collision. Let's take a look at two things that are right now are invisible. We can look at different kind of stuff that are, we can show different stuff that's turned off by default. And one of them is collision. So let's checkbox it. And now we see these purple lines. And it's when the collision on the hand, now the hand collision is a big sphere, and that's what's actually causing the problem. We would maybe want to adjust that, or make like just collisions around the fingers. It's just a big sphere, so it's pretty loose. But it's when it overlaps with these collisions, do we get be able to pick it up. So those are the two if statements, right? It needs to not be simulating physics, or actually the if statement is if it has a collision, there's overlapping it. If I'm overlapping the collision, then do things with the physics. Either take it off and make it attached to me, or detach it from me and turn the physics back on. So let's take a little bit of a look at this object right here. So this is called a static mesh. I've selected it right here, and then here are the details about it. It's got its transform, right, where its location, rotation, scale is. This is how we could like rotate it around, move it, or read where it is. And it's got two things. It's got a mesh that has properties, and it's got a material that has properties. We'll do materials next week, so don't even worry about that. There's some built in. We'll just take it for granted that it's purple or blue for right now. But here's the mesh. It is a cube. And this cube lives in a world. It's called the world grid material. And if I want to, I can look at the collisions, and I can see again those collision lines. Alright, that's cool enough. I understand what a cube is. Now, I said I wanted us to work with starter content. This is completely safe content that's really fast to render, so it's safe to use. If I'm going to add new, at the top here I'm going to add in content. I get to add in starter content. Alright, so if I didn't do it at the very beginning, I could do it now. And it's going to add a couple maps, a couple of particle systems, a couple of materials. I guess we can get materials today. And store them all on my hard drive in the project folder. Yeah. Oh, you want to do marketplace content right now? Yeah, I mean, you can always log off and log back in with a different account. It's fine. Like if you're logged into your own and you want to get something from my thing, you can just log out, log in my account. Or, you know, if we're in the same room, you just say, hey, can you send that to me? We call those little carrier pigeons when we want to send content around back and forth, make little tiny projects that just have a relevant thing. And oftentimes that's how we debug things remotely when I'm at home and you guys are at school and you're like, my project's not working, like which level, and I'll show you how to make those in a second. But in general, the marketplace content does two things. It's either its own project, and then you have to learn how to migrate things around, which we'll get into today, or it is a asset that you can add to a project, right? So that then you just direct it towards your project and say go, and it'll just inject it in. And that's exactly how I'm doing the starter content right now. I'm saying in this project, just add it in. Cool. All this content is stored locally, but it's in like in a vault, and in the engine. And whenever you need it, you're pushing it out of the engine. You can actually open up the engine and get at everything you want to. You could download the source code from GitHub and completely turn it into your own engine if you want to. Make custom builds, and GitHub is just full of pulls and forks of the Unreal Engine with special rendering capabilities and all that kind of stuff, where you can change what the default settings are. Oh, totally the same thing. Yeah, totally. That's probably in that website that's like Unity Unreal, as the store marketplace. I'd say that since Unreal Engine's only been free for 3 years, it doesn't have as much free content. It seems to be it's a more expensive store, I find, but it does have plenty of free content. And then also a large amount of Unity and Unreal assets are the same kind of assets, and a Unity thing can be exported and put into an Unreal project. So oftentimes, some things. Everything that's locked inside of an FBX file, which is the file format for models, is cross-platform, right? Code doesn't transfer between the two. That makes sense. So now look, we have all this stuff. We have, we can build a little house, right? This is content from that starter pack, right? So whenever you build whatever little world you're going to do today, this is what I was saying. Your room building, not world building right now. It's got this kind of stuff, but it's also got like a filter by particle systems. So now we're playing with fire, right? Smoke, steam, ambient dust. Super important in VR. You have to have so much ambient dust. Like you see at the beginning of Henry, right? There's I'll show you how to make a menu and put ambient dust in it. It's ideal. These shaders are compiling. This is just a process Unreal's doing in the background, and you can watch the countdown on the bottom right side. Getting back into the assets, though, let's go back over to this thing. What if I want to throw more than cubes? I know, you might want to do something else. It's crazy. So, I want to throw some of the other new content that I have from the starter pack. So let's go back over to the filters, and let's filter by static meshes. And those are just 3D assets, right? And we got like arrows and chairs and sconces and lamps and, you know, where is the statue? I'm going to filter by word statue. There's the statue, I saw it. Okay, so what I want to do is I want this to be a statue, but I don't want to change the other ones. And this is the hard part conceptually, that we're going a little bit further advanced. It'll make sense, but don't worry about it if it feels like it's like I skipped a level and went to like week 5, because I am kind of. But this gets you a way of having a mechanism you can use and do more with. This is actually a blueprint. And we don't have to open up the blueprint at all, because it has variables that are public. And those public variables are the mesh and the material. So I can just drag and drop this one instance, and it's a statue. Right? So now I can make an entire game out of just this mechanism of having hands and having things that can be picked up. That's all it takes, right? And it applied probably the blue material, right? Because I had that blue material, right? Whereas normally the statue probably is a clear material. I can then go. I see this is a statue glass. If I drag it over to, see, then it says green. Yeah, this goes. I got my glass material back on. All right, you can open this up and see like all the functionality for being able to be picked up, turning off and on gravity, and all that kind of stuff. And feel free to navigate it, but I'm not going to worry about getting into programming today. And now, you know, maybe it's a little big, and I can come over here and see my scale, and I can manually put in values, right? So location in the world, rotation, and scale. Or it has this what's called a transform widget, and that is these arrows. I want to make scale and position, rotation, and scale right here. And that's the exercise for the homework, is really like learning how to place things, get comfortable with the layout. That's all it is. And maybe if you can, you know, do a little bit of self-expression and art within those constraints. So I'm going to go over here to scale, and it has a different looking widget. And the shortcuts for these are W, E, and R. If you want to cycle through them with shortcuts. And if I hold 1, I can scale one side, right? Undo. I can, if there's a little bar in here between them, right there, and you see how now 2 are highlighted? So I can scale on 2 axes at one time. Right, so I'm scaling like that, right? Or if I just grab it in the center, I can evenly scale it out. And then go back to position, and I can place it down. And then it has, right now it has snapping on, which means that like there's a grid and it won't go in between levels. It's like doing whole number rotations and stuff. If you want to make a little more fine control, take off these snappings, right? Take off rotation, take off position, and take off scale. Right now it's snapping to 0.25 Unreal units, which is a meter, I think. Well, at least for position. And scale, I don't know what it is for rotation. It's degrees, 10 degrees, etc., etc. So that takes care of all of this on your viewport. The last one, it looks like a little rabbit or a camera with like fast moving things on it. This is how fast you can navigate through your world. Sometimes you make really big worlds, sometimes you make really small worlds. And I can tell my camera that I want it to be super fast. Right? Or we could be a really slow and be on 1. I'm actually going. It's just going real slow. All right. If I use the mouse wheel, I go a lot faster. Speaking of mouse wheel, I really highly recommend. I think I said this last week. Get a 3-button mouse, or 2-button mouse with a scroll wheel. You can get one on Amazon for like $4. It's not worth doing it just on a trackpad. Great. So now we're navigating around, and we know how to change things in here. So I'm not sure if I could pick it up or not. Let's see if we can identify if it has collisions. Turn on collision, and it does. And so this is where they drew in the collision. Instead of using, so collisions are hard to calculate, right? You're talking about, like, this is 4,000 polygons, right? And if you want to like actually use the geometry as a collision, that's a lot of calculations to think about each individual polygon. So what they've done is they've made a proxy here, and you're only looking at 6 polygons, right? And that's these faces right here, these green things. I don't know if you guys can see. So it's simplified it a lot. These can be deleted and reshaped and all that kind of stuff. You have the tools within here. You can remove everything. So let's just remove it. And now it has no collisions, and now I wouldn't be able to pick it up. My hand would go right through it. And then if I want to add in something that's a little more custom, I could do an auto collision and just say apply. And now look at that. It's made a much more tighter thing, but it's going to have to process a lot more. Game engines are lazy by default, and a lot of these things are turned off. So certain things aren't working. You need to like think to yourself, oh, is collisions? Does it have collisions? Because sometimes it just doesn't worry about it. Like for things that are part of landscape, like flowers and rocks. Like, hey, you're not going to pick up a boulder, so let's by default not even have that. So it's not calculating it in the background. All right, cool. So let's go pick up this wonderful statue and beat somebody over the head with it. Here I am in the world. Cool. Aww. There we go. There we go. Okay, cool. So one other thing I want to do is like I really want to beat somebody's head over it, but from the table. And see, it's not letting me get to where I want to go. I want to get on top of there, and I can't. So again, it's one of these things that it doesn't want to calculate when it doesn't need to, where you can navigate to. I'm going to come back here to show, a thing called navigation, and this beautiful green will show up. That's actually everywhere I can go. And then when you build a world from scratch, we need to know this, because everyone's like, I built a world, I can't go anywhere. It's because you need to put navigation in there. By default, it's not there. And this left side is like a bunch of stuff that's stored in the engine. I'm going to start typing in navigation. That's not it. Nav mesh bounds. So definitely just remember that, because it's not intuitive for me at all. Navigation mesh bounds. And then if I threw it in there, let's just delete this one. I think I just delete the floor. Let's delete the nav mesh bounds. Oh, there's like a bunch of them. What I'm going to do is nav mesh bounds. Okay, so this is the nav mesh bounds. Go back. Show it. Redo. Control I. Let's just put our own in there. I did something. Delete you. All right. The other one I messed up somehow the visibility of it, but I just added in that from scratch, and using our knowledge of, you see how it's a 3-dimensional volume as well. Like if I moved it up. Like it's no longer calculating navigation. I have to make sure it's overlapping, and then I can scale it out. There it is. So this is pretty much what I had before, but I want to get on top of these things, so let's also scale it up. So now it's covering up over there. Okay? So I know a lot of this is really dry, but I really want you guys to own this and not be afraid of this template, because we can get really far in our interaction just by knowing how to use the hand controllers and use this blueprint so that we can change these what's called the pickup cubes. So now I can be able to jump up. What I want to do is I want to jump up and throw something off from up there. So where is this thing called BP PickupCube? The trick is right-clicking and saying, show me where it is in the asset. And there it is. I can also do Control B as a shortcut. And this is that blueprint. Again, we can look at the code if we want to, right? The logics all make sense. When I pick things up, simulate physics, and attach, we already said all that pseudocode. But all I want to do is know that I can add fresh ones into the world. There it is. And there's my little cube. And what do I want to make it? I want to make it a HMD that I can pick up. Oops. Cool root. And then there's like a little HMD. Tiny little HMD. That's blue and upside down. I want to give it a funky texture. And let's make it look like it is a piece of moss. There we go. That's like sustainable VR when it starts rendering. And you can see the collision. The collision is pretty big, right? It might not be really gratifying because you're picking it up and it's like 5 feet away. So you can delete the collisions and make new collisions on it. You can use primitives for collisions, stuff like that. But here you go. So this is navigating the VR template. Okay, cool. That's it for the template. Let's make something from scratch. First of all, I want to show you the new levels that it gave us. Let's not do it that way. Let's go to take off filter, go to level. And now we have a whole bunch of other levels. I'm going to save real quick. And just so you know, this save button, while it seems like the most obvious way to save, it only saves the current object you have selected. It doesn't save everything. Save all is down here. Don't ask me, but Control S doesn't save everything. It just saves the one object. Again, you'll just have to like take notes on all this stuff because there are like little caveats that we need to kind of get out of the way. So I have a starter map. Sure. And so this is the content examples starter map. And again, we're compiling shaders because it's the first time this computer's seen this map. But what is another like display, another museum of things you can steal, right? And it's a pretty effective way of just like seeing how lighting hits some of these textures and stuff when I get done compiling textures. But what we're going to do is look at the basic. So there, one's compiled, right? You've got gold sphere or bronze or something like that, and I can select on it, and I can see what the material is, and I can, I can hit the little find it for me, and it'll send me right to it, and then I can put it on what things I have. So this is what you get used to, is how you find things when the content browser. Like it's all about stealing, and we're like window shopping kind of, but when you window shop and really steal things. So we're gonna make something from scratch, but we don't have to make things from complete scratch. We have 3 templates. We have a default one, which is just like a platform for us to stand on. We'll start off with this one today. It also has a really interesting sky. We'll get into that today as well. It's got a VR basic, which gives you a bunch of things you can punch and roll around and things like that. And then it has just like empty, like I want to make everything from scratch. I'm making, grandmother's cake right here. We're gonna start off with default because I really enjoy the sky. So we've already talked about like public variables and things. We've talked about a little bit about lighting. This is our player start, and if I hit play, this is where I'll start. So I'm going to show you the difference between hitting play normally. So if I hit play normally, I'm just moving around like this, right? Just flying. If I do VR preview, I'm trapped. I'm just there. And I don't have any hands, and I can't teleport anywhere. So this is the default. This is Henry, right? This is all we needed to do, Henry, was just put like a player start, and that's all we're at. But I want to get this VR template in there, right? So we come down here, go over here, and I don't need the player start. Then I'm going to take the VR template. It's called motion controller. And it's called motion controller pawn. Remember, we're using pawns. And it's denoted by the camera there. And then, just so I know which way I'm facing, we need to put an Eames chair, because that's part of the starter content. A specific kind of chair is called an Eames chair. Very stylish. And I'm going to rotate it. Cool. Now, the one thing when I was talking about pawns is that you have to possess them. We have to realize that we have to. What I want you guys to know is that you're player 0 when you're playing a game, and over the details for this pawn, you just need to say that I'm player 0, and that's the one thing that we might forget. So I've made this level from scratch, and now I have interactions. If I hit the VR template, I won't be able to navigate because I didn't put a navigational mesh. But at least I have hands now, right? I try to go places. It says, you're not going anywhere. So let's add in our navigation bounds. There it is. Intersect with the floor. And expand. And now, if you like looking at that pretty green, you just have to enable it so we can see where we're going. I feel confident that that's enough for me, so I'm going to disable it because I don't care about seeing it anymore. And now we have a fully functioning VR template with navigation. I don't think I can reach that. Let's make it bigger. Way bigger. Cool. Oops, I just played different play. I gotta do VR play. So now, I'm gonna go to this chair and I'm gonna try to punch it. Actually, I just hit the Oculus Store button. Hopefully we don't have to wait as long to load it. And this is all because I'm trying to do Open Broadcaster at the same time as doing VR. Again, this is a much more dry lesson than the other ones. It's a more functional one. I didn't save the map, so I'll probably do that one from scratch. So we'll say new level with the thing, no player start, and we want it to have a pawn. Cool. Now we're playing. We want to be able to move around, so let's navigate. That's not it. We want a nav mesh. Bounds volume. Boom, 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 boom. And then let's throw in a static mesh. Save real quick. Save early, save often. And let's just put in like a rock. Alright, I'm going to punch a rock. And so by default, I can't do anything with it, probably. Let's check and see if it has collisions. It does not, so I'm just going to add in a simple, like, sphere. And now it's got like this crazy huge collision, which I can scale and rotate and all that kind of stuff. Let's save that. Hit play. I forgot to do making it player 0. I was just doing that to test you guys, and you didn't catch it. Now I got everything I need. I got a rock. I can't really hit it. Can't pick it up, but I can navigate still. I'm like stuck inside the rock. That's really funny. Get me out. Get me out. So I got stuck inside the rock because of the collisions. Oh, VR. Hilarious. But the one thing I didn't do is I didn't set it to simulate physics. And so all this stuff was in these checkboxes on the side. Under physics, say, yes, let gravity take control of you. I'm the worst VR driver there is. Turn around. It's not working. Whatever. But if I remember that I have that BP PickupCube, pick up. Turn off my filter for static mesh. Then I can start picking up things again. We'll get into more about physics later on. We made it from scratch. So what I challenge you to do is not only use the starter content, but I'm going to teach you how to migrate things from other projects. So while that's opening up, I'll just go ahead and make one more adjustment to this guy. I'm also going to place it up in the air. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so it fell. At least that's doing the right thing. There we go. I knew it had physics on it. My hand doesn't have physics on it, is what I think it is. So I knew I'd made it have a collision. That was fun. So yeah, we're gonna try to make like little levels, like just get used to tumbling around and try to create something from scratch. I have a bigger plane. I want it to be grassy, right? When it says M, that means it's a material. You put a material in there, just drag it on, or you can go over here where it said green. Now I have green grass. I've got rocks. If I hold down Alt and click on these arrows, I can make copies of things. I made a copy of the floor. I'm going to make a copy of the rock. Rock copies, rock copies, rock copies. There we go. And now we're just getting used to our own bespoke VR. Come back here. Boing. There we go. Cool. So let's see where we're at with the other project real quick. Opening up. So let's go shopping. Let's see. We'll keep it easy. I really want this car. Really, really want a car. So I can right click on it and say browse to asset, or I can just say Control B, and it takes me to, there's the car. Ah crap, I want all of it. I want all of them. So I'm going to take all these objects, and notice that it says it's in content, vehicles. So this file path actually exists in our computer. If I say show me this in my Explorer, this is the file structure of that Project Showdown, right? Everything's inside of content, and then everything's kind of separated out into these folders that make sense, right? Audio's and audio, blueprints are blueprints, and there's actually a style guide for Unreal we'll go over next week where we can keep these consistent so that you're working on a team that's brand new that lives in LA. You can know where their assets are and what they're called, because everyone kind of calls things the same naming conventions. The main important thing for us right now is we just want to know where our content folder. We're going to steal it from one content folder, and we're going to navigate and put it into our own project's content folder. So everything from that Learn tab that we have access to, like the content examples that we looked at last week, that's like the encyclopedia of everything, we can steal that and put it into our project. And that way we get really advanced particle systems and textures and stuff without having to, you know, sweat too much. So right click underneath Asset Actions, I want to migrate. Okay? If I said export, it would actually put it onto my hard drive as an FBX file, which is a file format for putting things into Maya and Unreal and Unity and Cinema 4D and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to migrate, and it tells me which content folder. So here's all the things. Yes. So not only did it take these, so blue is static mesh. These are static meshes. Not only is it taking the static mesh, but it's taking every material, every texture, and everything that's associated with that, so that it doesn't break all these connections. So it's going to migrate. Here we go. We have materials, all these 5 meshes, the textures that make up the materials, and that way it'll all be there in my new project. It's a pretty intuitive thing. It's really easy to migrate levels. Like you just right click and say migrate a level. It'll take everything in that's level for you. So okay, and it says on top, choose a destination content folder. I am working in Worlds on a Wire 2019, and then I need to select the content folder. When I say select folder, content migration successfully completed. And then it should just auto update that I have vehicles. Right now I have a vehicles folder that didn't exist before, and it's probably going to be in there. So now I have some cars, some tiny cars, some big cars, a computer that's freaking out. Oh, okay. There we go. Car. I'm going to save. And local cars. Right. Civilian cars, cars without wheels. I would not eat it in a box with a fox. There we go. And so now we're making a little world there. Cool. And if it helps you to like sketch something out or do a mood board, feel free to like post any kind of drawings you might do. But we'll do that more formally in a couple of weeks. I mean, we need to have cool explosions though. So let's get a particle system. Oops. So many awesome. Well, of course we want all of it. Yes, everything. And it saved my location from before, so I just have to set for that. And now we have particles. So anyway, we'll make our world and just use all the stuff that already works inside of Unreal. Sure. Whoa, that's crazy. And things will break and things will be out of control, but that's fine for right now. Cool. Then I want to show you guys 2 console commands. The first one is important for VR, and it's called stat FPS. right? If I hit tilde, no, even before I even do that, if I just say, go to this little arrow, and I say, show me my frame rate, FPS, frames per second, it's important to monitor this stuff, right? It's like, oh, my project's already like at a super low frame rate, and it's not going to be enjoyable. So, you know, if I'm in here, I don't know if you can see it, but I think I can see it in my corner of my eye. Yeah, you see frame rate. The other way of doing it is through hitting the tilde button. Like if I'm rendering, do tilde button, stat, FPS. That's weird. Let's do that again. Cool. That should be like that. Let's do it without VR real quick. Okay, well at least it's showing there. Showing weird. That might be something else. So it's only rendering at 60 frames per second. So that might be a project setting. We can get to that later. The other one is, I think it's just like an issue of having to use like a F modifier. I'll have to figure this out. Okay, so I have a console command thing if I'm not playing down here, and I can say stat FPS. Turned it off. Stat FPS. Turns it back on. It's up there in the top right. The other one is high res screenshot. If I start typing in the word high, it says high res shot. I don't know if you guys can see it from right there. I can navigate to it, hit tab. I don't know, let's do it again. I haven't done this in a while. I'm going to select it. There it is. So I select it, it's already written it out for me, high res shot, spacebar, and then a multiplier. And it, as I said, it can go up to 16 times the size of, like, this is an HD screen, 1920 pixels by 1080. And if I do by 16, it's going to be 16 times the size of that. Imagine how big that's going to get. So maybe we won't tax our computers too much. Let's just try it like 4 times or 2 times, right? And let's make some really nice screenshots of stuff. So before we do that, though, let's frame ourselves really well. I'm going to take out this VR pawn for a second so I can just fly around and do my player start. Alright, so I can fly around again. I could have just ejected as well. Like, oh yeah, like that loose. Yeah, it's like, look at that chrome, right? Shift F1 gives you back my key, the mouse. Alright, that looks really good. F11 goes full screen. Yeah, like that wheel on the way looking at fire or something. There you go, rock. Slowly rocking. At the bottom left, high res shot. Hit tab to finish autocomplete. Spacebar, and we'll do it by like, I don't know, let's just do it by 8. Hit enter. It's gonna freeze. Tilde. Tilde. Opens and closes it. Compute, compute, compute. Compute, compute, compute. There you go. And it's done. And if I escape and hit F11 so it's not full screen anymore, now that we know the folder structure, we know that there's a saved folder right next to where our content folder is. Let's go to Worlds in a Wire, and the save folder is where our screenshots are, and it's in screenshots. And I now have a item that is 100 megabytes for PNG. Oh, well, it's too big for Paint. I don't know why I'm trying to use Paint anyway. Let's open it up and show me Photos. Alright, so Photos has like a little UI for a slider. So let's see what the resolution of this is. Let's make sure we can find it still. Look at that resolution. Control to zoom. Look at that detail. It's pretty good, right? So like, this is a really great way of like it doesn't do like VR doesn't do really good at video export that well, but like you can get some really nice stills. So like the homework is like take 3 cool pictures of whatever you make, right? And just it's not it's just a technical exercise to get comfortable with moving things around and breaking apart other projects and getting the content. We'll start getting into more of a logical flow of how to build things in an easier manner starting next week. I just want to talk about what was already there and give you some agency so you can plan around. Because like next week we'll use Tilt Brush and you can create an entire world that you can break apart with your hands that's made in Tilt Brush and that kind of fun stuff. Nothing really narrative driven, but just more aesthetically and mood driven, right? So unless let me just check the syllabus to make sure I didn't forget anything, but I think that's all I wanted to cover today. So you don't have to use the equipment to do. So all the stuff I did with the hand controls, yes. But if you wanted to build a world and use that player start, you don't. You could do it from home on any computer that can install Unreal. I went over it last week, but another way of making the computer run more performatively is to scale down the settings. And right now I'm like doing like. Oh, it's already it did automatically for me, but make sure you choose like low, and you can change resolution scale, and this will make things run a little bit better on your computer. Unless you're using like a desktop and you really want to see some really high fidelity. And let's see, so we did high res shot, we did frame rate, and then so console commands. Yeah, so you're gonna read about read about some design stuff and do some of those experiences and put it in a week 2 chat from a blog post, and that's enough for today. I don't want these demos get too long. Cool.